Welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you have joined us. We're going to be discussing how to attract younger members. So we're doing a masterclass with the amazing Seth Brooks.
Woo! That's me.
He's in Portland, Oregon tonight, and I've known Seth for quite a while. I was actually an assistant leader to him when he was building a group for young adults, and I saw with my own eyes.
Not tonight, it's 4 a.m. in the morning.
He doubled the size of the group in less than 2 months. So I know he's done amazing things, and I'm very proud to welcome Seth Brooks as our guest tonight. Hi, Seth.
Hello, Sharon. Hello, viewers out there in cyberspace.
For those of you, the people on the call who don't know you and don't know what you've done and haven't seen with their own eyes you in your amazing action doubling groups of young people, tell us a little bit about your experience with working with young people.
Okay, so my experience with working with young people is purely in the not-for-profit sector, working in churches very specifically. And I was employed as a young 21-year-old some 17 years ago to go into school environments and communicate our mission, to communicate our message, the message that the church brings about Jesus. And it wasn't a message that necessarily young people were like all about. And I was employed to go into those environments and segue them and build a bridge for them to be able to come into our organisation, to come into the church. And in Australia, the CEO, the leader of our church, which is a big church, a big multi-1,000-plus church, they realised that they wanted to employ a young 21-year-old to do this, and I got the job. And so I did that for a number of years. We would have seen thousands and thousands of young people come into voluntary context within the school environment, and then from there into our organisation, into the church, into our youth group. We built the largest youth group in our state at the time. Probably saw some 350 young people a week gathering together, and then that was ranging from the ages of 12 through to around 28, 30. And then later on went on to do that again in another capacity in another church, and later again I've done that in a number of large environments in larger churches and also in smaller environments in smaller churches.
Okay, so you were employed full-time to do this, were you?
Employed full-time, and additionally I've done voluntary contact as well.
Sorry, you mentioned going into schools. How many schools would you go into, like, on a weekly basis?
Yeah, we're in 7 schools a week. Wow. It's the same 7 schools every week, and that was the role. And they're all based around our local church, and that then took me into also a separate role where we would gather all the different churches and then go and do these occasional large events where we would gather maybe anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 young people. We'd have big bands, and we would, again, the same role was to segue teenagers, young people into these large events, and I was the person that oversaw that particular role as well with Youth Alive Australia.
That's amazing. So like 5,000 to 10,000 young people. I know a lot of CEOs of organisations, from the Scouts to golf clubs to RSLs, footy clubs, who'd love to be able to reach that many young people and kind of ensure the success of the future of their organisation. So are you still doing this kind of, I know you're in America now, you're in Las Vegas last week I think, but you're mainly in Portland. Are you still doing this kind of work now?
I'm still involved. I would say that now I'm no longer a 21-year-old Sharon. I know I look it, but now I'm 38 years old, and I've become the guy then that wants to see young 21-year-olds and people that find it a little bit easier to connect with a younger generation, a younger age group. And so I'm trying to connect with 18, 19, 20-year-olds and raise them up and mentor them in the role of being the ones who go and being the ones who build these environments that segue young people into our organisation, into our church.
That's great. So it wasn't always like this though, because I remember having a conversation with you once. I think it was at City Farm in Perth, and we were having lunch,
Right.
and you just mentioned in passing that at school you felt like you were a dag. You didn't feel like you were cool at all. So how did you go from that to being employed specifically to be cool and to be attractive to young people?
You know, Sharon, I am a dag, and I was a dag, and I was a 13-year-old dag.
You are the coolest dag I know if you're a dag.
Sharon, thank you. Become more socially acceptable. But I was very silly as a teenager, and I did not understand the difference between just being myself, and there seemed to be a breakdown in the communication of that to other people, because they definitely didn't like what I was putting out. um, and that was partly because teenagers are a fairly insecure bunch, and so you better conform to the line. But also partly because I didn't understand necessarily how to communicate that in a way that they found attractive. So I think
So how did you turn it around?
I started to observe people who were very popular. I started to observe the ones that everyone wanted to be like, and I started to say, well, hang on, I'm me. I'm always going to be me. I want to be authentic to that. But at the same time, I understand that maybe the way I'm putting myself out there is not necessarily, people aren't finding it that attractive. And so I looked at people who I considered very attractive, very popular. I noticed what they were wearing. I noticed how they spoke. I noticed how they communicated. I noticed the things that they were good at. And I then started to say, well, look, if I'm going to be a person who others desire to connect to, maybe I need to shift up how I'm going to, communicate myself. And so in order to connect, I changed maybe the way I segued myself into, the world. I changed up what I wore. I changed up some of the things that I communicated, and I would qualify my craziness a little bit more. And I was always enthusiastic, but I started to maybe be able to change that up. And so I started to understand a little bit more what it is that young people are attracted to, what it is that makes this work for people. Yeah, I had to. Otherwise, I was going to have no friends, Sharon.
Well, that's not the case. I know now that you have thousands of friends. You have more friends than anyone I know. Now, let's talk about the importance of young people. Are young people even important to an organisation?
Sharon, you know, any organisation is only ever one generation away from complete extinction. And we always, in church, we remind ourselves of this. I've been around churches that they have an ageing membership. It's 60 plus. And they are desperate to try and attract young people. But when I go in there, it's an environment that isn't friendly for young people.
Okay.
There is no change of the way that they communicate that a young person is attracted to. Not that you change the message or the mission. The mission and the message are sacred.
Right.
There's no changing or building a bridge of communication to be able to draw young people in. And so I think young people are so important because, again, if we don't attract young people, then slowly but surely we will have a declining membership and we will surely die. We will surely die. I say that young people are important because they bring in... Sorry, go on, Sharon.
No organisation can survive if they're not attracting younger members. It's literally the life and death issue for an organisation, isn't it?
And I think organisations are a lot more fun with young people. I really do. They bring passion, they bring enthusiasm. Young adults are the workhorses of organisations. You know, if you get a tapped-in, passionate young adult to be part of your organisation, well, they bring great ideas, they bring a freshness, and they bring a confidence in the future of the organisation that older people find refreshing and reassuring.
And just that energy, it does change an organisation. But does everyone in the organisation have to value young people, or is it okay if you just have one person that does that?
I think that there has to be an environment in an organisation where young people can be themselves. I really think that's important. There has to be an environment for that where they are preferred, because they do, to a certain extent, lack the maturity to be able to come into an environment and completely strip off maybe all their preferences in order to be a part of a setting that's completely foreign to them. Whereas I feel that older people are far more mature in their capacity to maybe give away their preferences. So in church, the style of music that we have in our congregation is often youth-focused, because older people just have more maturity to be able to give away that preference, whereas young people, they just steer clear of the hymns, that sort of thing, because they lack the maturity to maybe give preference to someone else in that way. And so I think having an environment...
Everyone really needs to be involved and understand the importance of young people at some level, don't they?
Sharon, you've got to love young people. You just got to love them. You've got to be all about them. You've got to love them. Do you want young people in your organisation? Are young people cool? Are they cool? Yes, they are. They're awesome. They're just awesome young people. You know what I mean? They're legendary. You've got to believe it. If you don't believe it, Sharon, why would you want them to be a part of your organisation? It's a bit self-serving. It's all about them, And I believe that our mission in our church, essentially, I believe that what we're putting out there, young people need.
Yeah.
And
I think every organisation has something to offer to young people, whether it's a workplace. I know when I was working at the ABC, we did really good with attracting toddlers with Peppa Pig, but we had an ageing audience. In general, our average audience was getting older and older, and we were seeing like a drop-off in terms of our teenage viewers in particular. So we'd pick up some of them with online stuff and some of them with radio stuff, but to add young people, to attract young people into the organisation as employees, as suppliers, as creators, content creators, and as viewers and listeners, was something that was really valued in the organisation and desperately needed. So everyone...
Sharon, what did ABC do? ABC built a platform, ABC2, ABC3.
Yeah.
They built a platform that was very specific to young people.
Yeah.
They built an environment that was like a segue environment, like an environment that is a bridge into ABC. And
definitely there was an understanding that sometimes the media is the message. So if we're communicating content in just, say, an interview format, that's not necessarily something where people will sit down on the couch and watch that on television. But if you do the very same thing in an app on a mobile, simply because it's an app on a mobile, that medium tells the young person that you want to connect with them. So sometimes just the media is the message itself.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, having an environment where young people feel safe, where young people feel like they can be themselves, where the youthful exuberance is appropriate, is important.
Yeah.
And again, I was employed to create these environments and then, in turn, communicate our mission, communicate our message.
So how did you find younger members then, or how would you do it now? I know you're still doing it. I think you're at a youth group earlier this evening. So how do you find young people?
There are sociological bottlenecks which are our entire future past. There are places where young people congregate. There are places like schools, educational institutions, the internet, Facebook, Instagram. There are places where young people congregate, where I believe that you can effectively pull your resources to target these places. And so we very specifically targeted schools as an environment where we wanted to serve the perceived needs of the school. We wanted to provide the perceived needs of teenagers, which was all about providing food, Sharon. Hot chips, ice cream. What else
You
does a
would have got me
teenager
along if you
feel
had
like
chocolate.
they really need? Entertainment, games, Nintendo, table tennis competitions, basketball competitions, things that people were all about, and they thought they had to have it because they were bored, because it was recess time, and we would want to provide these sorts of things, these perceived needs, and provide that for a young person, and so we do that, and we do that very much.
So it sounds like you start from what they need, not what you want to say. Would that be fair to say? You look at where they are and what their needs are when they're congregating there. If they're bored and they want to do something.
They don't understand the value of your mission, of my mission. They don't understand the value of for me as a pastor in a church, they don't understand the value of a relationship with God. They don't understand what it's like to have an encounter with Him. So, breaking it down, they do understand how good chocolate tastes, though. They do understand the buzz of winning Mario Kart on Nintendo. And so if that's what they do understand, then that's what we provide, an environment where they can enjoy those things. But with teenagers today, positional leadership is far less important, and relational leadership is far more, and experiential knowledge is far more valued. And so,
what do you mean by the difference between those two things? When you say positional leader versus relational leader, what is that difference?
Well, I think in those environments that we're creating, we literally become a person that invests personally into their lives. So as a 21-year-old, I would invest personally into their life through my continual running that environment, through my being able to encourage them, through my being able to say how much I believe in them, through being able to build a personal contact, through being able to be of personal value, to build a friendship with a young person. As a 21-year-old, I could still do that. As a 38-year-old, it's a bit weird, Sharon.
So you mentioned before that.
So I believe that
you were mentoring people.
I'm all about getting engaging a younger generation to do this. I'm all about engaging 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds to do this, because I think that's far more achievable than a 38, 39, 40, 50, 60-year-old doing this. I think, you know, the engaging of a 21-year-old is probably the starting point. If I was to say I have an aging context for a great mission.
Okay. So if I'm the president of an RSL club or something and I want to have younger members, then you would start by not doing it yourself. You would engage someone who's already at that level, like age about 21.
Yeah, I would. 18, 19, 20, 21. A person that understands your mission, a person that you can influence to a point of embodying your mission. A person who you can have connection with, who you can communicate with, who you do feel a sense of being able to invest into personally. And from there, they are the ones that are the attractor. Young people attract young people, Sharon. And I think we all understand when a person is an attractive young person, in the sense that they are embracive of others, as opposed to socially not so good. I think we can all spot that difference, and I think we would find young people that seem to have that X factor, to have that capacity to attract other young people, and they are the ones we would invest into in this way, and who I do engage to be those ones to reach out to others.
So what are some of the things that you would mentor those people in? Like, do you talk to them about pop culture? Do you talk to them about how they talk to young people, or how they look, or where to find the young people? What sort of things do you mentor them in?
Yeah, and again with that, Sharon, I don't think you can ever tell someone not to be themselves, because I think young people just need to be themselves. And I'm never about change yourself. What I am about is learn how to communicate yourself in a way that others find attractive.
Okay.
Communicate yourself in a way that, and for a 21-year-old, I would always try and teach that. I remember I had a young lady who was involved in youth leadership in my youth group that I ran 5 or 6 years ago, but she was so earnest, almost overly earnest, in a way that teenagers found so not cool. So not cool. And she had very little understanding in her language of what younger people were talking about. And so I encouraged her. I said to this young lady, I won't use her name, but I said to her, look, why don't you go and find out what the top 10 pop music albums at the moment are, the top 10 list, the Australian top 10 list. Why don't you go and find what these songs are and actually listen to the songs and start to lace some of these references through your communication of yourself and the mission. I said, why don't you actually go and find out what the top 10 movies are at the moment for the audience that you're trying to reach? Because I feel like in understanding what young people are listening to and what young people are engaging with and lacing some of that, it builds a bridge, Sharon. It builds a bridge. Right. And so as this young lady did this, and she started to understand what young people were being influenced by, some of the language that they were familiar with, she was able to adjust herself. She kept the earnestness, but she learned how to change her language. And I would sometimes invite her to speak from the front, but instead of it sort of just missing and going over the heads of the younger audience, now the words she was speaking, that there would be switch-on points in what she was saying, because she'd be referencing popular culture. And the popular culture, I pointed her straight to the internet with that. I'd say, look, go check out what the top 10, top 20, top 30 albums are, and actually have a listen and start to blend these things, these references through your communication of your mission, of your message, in order to build a bridge.
That's good, because it doesn't take a lot to connect with young people. If they've got one thing that sort of resonates with them, they do tend to connect quite easily, don't they? Young people are looking for a connection.
Yes. And there's value to our mission, Sharon. There's value to the mission of organisations that have been long-standing. There's a mission. There's value to the mission of the church, and there's value to what we are sharing. But we often fail because people don't understand the preciousness of it. And so we're trying to build a context. We're trying to build a bridge for a younger audience to engage with that.
So let's talk about an environment that is attractive to young people. So you've convinced young people to leave their home and come out to an event that you're running. What's there? Is food there? Is music there? Is the music live? Is there games? Is there humour? What are the elements of environments that are attractive to young people?
I don't know who said this. I think it might have been a gentleman by the name of Dr. Phil Pringle, the leader of C3 Church. And he said, we understand that people connect to light, fire, beauty, sweet fragrance, excitement, success, celebration, where they're loved, respected, welcomed and recognized, laughter, vision, bold leadership, energy, high skill, courage, the new, the clever, the excitingly different, the well done, gifts, generosity, mercy. These elements are true across all the generations, including young people. And so I feel like teenagers are attracted to these things just the same as any other generation. we're just packaging it in a way that's dressed, that's coated in a very youth and young adult friendly manner. And to do this, we would provide, like I said, these perceived needs, these environments where these perceived needs were provided. Young people love music. They really do.
Okay.
We would find an environment where young people could enjoy music. Young people love to dance and engage in music. So we would find an environment where young people could dance around and engage it. And of course, that music was carrying out the message of Jesus Christ. The music was, oh, by the way, that music's called worship. That music's called praise. That music is basically what was hymns in church, but now we're finding the music of a contemporary generation, and that's the music that young people are connecting to. And so music and the ability to connect with it, games, food, the sensory element that young people find so attractive, we would engage those elements and do engage those elements in what we do.
Is there a specific place where you can look to see, you know, what is cool, what is attractive to young people? If you're talking about your personal cool, I mean, I don't know how many times I've teased you about your Macklemore hairdo, but you still go with it. How do you get a look that is, you know, acceptable to young people? Where do you find out about that?
I feel like you look at young people, you know, you really look at them. Okay. I watch young people. I look at what they're watching, and I think if you ask the 13-year-old you do come across, what television shows do you watch?
Okay.
What music do you listen to? And you ask a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, you ask them, what are you into? What is it that you listen to? You ask them their favorite bands. There are some of these elements that can sync with your mission. There are some elements that maybe can carry a completely different message. But in the church, there are some bands, there are some shows, there are some things that carry a message that's so completely at odds with our mission that we are unable to utilize those things.
But lots of it is, I don't want to use the word superficial, but they are like simple changes that you can make, aren't they? Their hairstyle, their clothes, your posture, eye contact. You know, they are things that everyone can learn and adapt, aren't they?
Yes, and I think that teenagers are worth it, making those subtle changes. We're not changing the mission. We're not changing the message. The message and the mission are sacred, but we are segueing our mission. We are building bridges of communication. I think our look, the clothes that we wear, the hairstyle that we have, communicates. And every couple of years it changes. Every 2 or 3 years there's a change required. And so I always have a fashion mentor or two. I had one when I was 21. I looked at myself. I said, I'm not communicating how awesome I am to people. They don't want to hang out with me. I'm not as popular as I should be, Sharon. And so I said, well, who is popular and what are they wearing? Goodness, look at their jeans. They're wearing these big baggy jeans. And so as a 21-year-old, I said, you know what? I'm going to wear what they wear. And then when I became 23, 24, 25, I'd look at what the 13 and 14-year-olds were wearing, and it was starting to get to be a stretch, but I could still just pull it off. You know? Right. And I'd wear what younger people were wearing, Sharon. And I would change my haircut to be something which they found cool and attractive. And I was employed in that capacity to do that. So that specifically was something that suited. As I aged, I would find young people, though, that understood this. I would find the 19, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that understood this, and I would teach them to do the same. And I found that if we can change it up, as a 21-year-old, if I can change it up and learn how to communicate myself with what I wear, the words I speak. I'd find out some of the slang and the sayings, and I would utilize it in order to communicate.
That's good because a lot of times I think peer pressure plays a lot of, it's literally a pressure that young people feel, and so you have to communicate a few times so that other people in the group start talking about it as well, don't you? Because there'll be some leaders who will be prepared to adopt early, but a lot of the group will want to wait until it's seen as cool by everyone before they'll move, yeah?
That's right. And I think if you're going to attract the people, the leaders in any given group, if you're going to attract that, the things they respect, they are very much looking, when you as a 21-year-old walk into a school environment, in any given group, maybe it's the group of surfers, there's always the one surfer who's the most surfiest of them all. That's the leader of the group. That's the one they all look at. If you're walking into a skatier crowd, there's always the best skater, and he's the skatiest of them all. Those particular individuals are the leaders in their groups, and they are looking out, and they are looking to a point of whether they can embrace you into their world. They're not thinking this way, but that's actually what's going on, and maintain respect for being the skatiest of them all, and so for being the surfiest of them all. And so as we were going to these environments, we would understand these things and try and make it easier for them to connect to us by looking a bit more skatier, by looking a bit more surfier.
Okay.
And that's why we would make these adjustments.
So you'd literally observe who are the leaders and try and target them to be attractive to them so that they could then do the hard work of bringing along the rest of their group, yeah?
Yeah, I think that young people attract young people. I think that the young leaders attract the rest of the young people, and I think in any given group there are young people who you are trying to attract into your group. Yes, the answer is yes, Sharon. We would do that.
So talk to me a bit about experience. Like young people want an experience, don't they? They don't want to just get information. They want to have an experience.
Yes.
So you can't just give them a message without providing some kind of experience for them.
Sharon, I get bored when I am just getting a message, but for some reason it's not engaging me. And I think this is because I'm a little bit like that way myself. When I'm at church, I get the leg wobble. When I'm at class or, in an educational place of education, I used to get the leg wobble. Now, I was wanting to learn, and, I'm interested in the mission, but I'd get the leg jig, and I'd start to scratch, and I'd be getting distracted. And I tend towards that. So I thought to myself, if I can't stay engaged, if I can't be engaged sensorily, then I've noticed that I don't take on what people are communicating. And so I would try and create an environment where I wasn't bored. So instead of a message taking 40 minutes to communicate, maybe we should communicate it in 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then maybe we can bring something else into it that helps all the people like me. Maybe we can engage some elements of humor, some elements of random, by having chocolates and lollies and throwing them out across the crowd for no particular reason.
Okay.
By having a person dressed in a monkey suit come screaming through your crowd for no particular reason, or for a reason that's communicating so you don't lose them completely. There's elements where I felt like you can break it up. In the same way we have ads, in the same way that I felt the message can be adjusted in order to be able to keep engagement. And because young people are so experiential with this, they are the only environment where a young person will sit down for an hour plus in a chair is really at the movies. And how much money are people spending on keeping him in that seat? $50, $60 million to do that.
Yeah.
And so, given that we don't have $50, $60 million every time we run our event,
Yeah.
we then need to understand that maybe getting a young person to sit in a seat for 10, 15 minutes is rather an achievement. And so we would really then adjust, how long we're communicating for from the front, particularly. Think about it. You go to church, you listen to people up the front, and you're sitting in a seat and standing and sitting. That environment for young people maybe doesn't work. Maybe we need to mix it up. And if we are, and maybe having them in a circle rather than where they're engaged in a discussion, even. If it's a larger crowd where there are elements that continually break it up, I think is important when communicating with the younger audience.
Yeah, well, I think this generation, like particularly in the last, say, half a dozen years, we've all gotten used to being able to give our 2 cents worth. So if something's on television, we all feel that we have the right to get on Twitter and say what we think about it. And so there's that kind of, it's almost like we feel like we have a right to engage with whatever's happening. So you really have to build that into the experience, don't you?
If you watch a music clip and see how many frames per second that you're looking at, there is so much happening that is broken into just a minute's worth of footage. And I feel like that we have a generation now that's conditioned to that. We have teenagers that are conditioned to that. And so the employing then of not just a very I think we need to engage these elements when we're communicating our message. Additionally, social media is so huge. And sometimes I've noticed with organizations, even churches, where we try and exclude it, where we try and get young people with their phones, put your phones away. Get rid of your phones, turn them off, you're in church. And I'm sure for people who are listening to this webinar, I'm sure for people listening to this webinar who don't necessarily run churches, who run an organisation of some sort, make the adjustment. But we would now encourage our young people. If there's anything I'm saying that you find slightly interesting, tweet it.
Okay.
Put it on Facebook. Take some photos. Take a selfie of you at church.
So do you create like photo opportunities in your environments? Do you have like photo booths or images that you want them to promote?
I'm the worst, Sharon. I'm the worst. I'm taking photos of myself in church and then clicking send in the middle of worship. And that's okay, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah, well,
I mean, in your organisation, when you're running your event, when you are running your meeting, are we communicating it beyond, to the masses? Are we communicating it beyond just that local environment? I think for teenagers, they want to communicate and they want to connect with their friends whilst taking on what you're bringing. And so we encourage our young people, tweet the message, tweet hey, everyone pull out your phone and invite 5 friends to this next event. Let's do it now. We have a point of doing that.
Can we just underline that? Because that's a great idea. So if you're in an event, you tell people to get their phone out and invite 5 of their friends right now.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a great idea.
Or if you're running a daytime, like we would have conferences.
Yeah.
Say, hey, everyone pull out your phone now, invite 5 friends, send it. Say, come out tonight too, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the embracing of this technology, the embracing of Instagram, CEO, get on Instagram. Person running an organisation, regardless of your age, get on Instagram, Facebook, embrace it. Just embrace it, because it's a mechanism that allows you to communicate your message beyond just the four walls of who's in the room. And I think
Yeah.
it's very important. I understand with Facebook that although it can seem like an intrusion into my world at times, albeit a controllable intrusion, I can control that. The benefit of it is all those people who are Facebook friends, I'm able to, through simply writing something down and hitting send, it goes out to them. And it's a great tool for being able to multiply the volume of your message. And same with
That's a good
Instagram.
point.
It's
Yeah.
basically the photo equivalent of doing that. And these things are all linkable, of course. And Twitter being the big one as well. To be able to learn what a hashtag is a great
Yeah.
is a great
Do
aid.
you have your own hashtags for events? Do you encourage people to tweet and use a particular hashtag?
Absolutely. And we communicate. We put it up on our screen what the hashtag
Okay.
for an event is. We communicate what the hashtag is. So, Sharon, you would probably be an expert at this. What is a hashtag, Sharon Jones?
It's the thing with the hash.
Yes. So again, on Twitter, and then across into the other, you can with the key hashtag on your you can write a phrase afterwards that is searchable, and everyone that has that phrase, the hashtag with a phrase after it, if you add that to what you're saying, it shows up with all the other people that have written that hashtag, and it can be grouped, and you can just go through it. And for people who are looking for that content, they can then see your content connected to that. So that's what a hashtag is.
Yeah, that's cool. I was talking to Michaela Sonique, and she was saying that even within social media, some are more popular, like Instagram is working really well for them at the moment, and Facebook and Twitter not so much. And so if they hand out, flyers at the high school, people might not even take the time to look for a bin before they drop them on the ground, unless they've got a voucher or something on there that they can say, present this for a free coffee or for a download or whatever. That people kind of shift between what's popular and what's not, and at the moment Instagram's number one for them.
Yep, Instagram is number one, no question. And
Yeah.
and that's because it's just so everyone loves to take a photo, and the technology that's involved. You look good on Instagram. Anyone can look good on Instagram, and so young people are very much into that at the moment. Yes, I think the utilisation of these technologies are essential in communicating our message, because young people, it's the information highway for young people. You can be a movie star. When I was growing up, I found it would be very hard to be a TV star. Everyone was watching TV, but there was very few people that were actually, the TV stars of their generation. Well, now you get to be the TV star. You get to be that person by taking a photo, by taking a video of your message, and by putting it on Instagram, by living your life with a camera around and putting it out there. You get to, instead of people watching TV for an hour in the evening, now they're on Instagram for an hour in the evening. Teenagers are on social media for an hour a day, and they'd be on longer if they could. And so you can literally be the TV star communicating your mission, your message, just by posting to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
You are the TV
Even if
star.
they are watching TV, the action might be happening on the TV screen, but all the conversation is on social media, isn't it?
It is, and I think we have important missions. We have important messages to communicate, and I feel like we can literally with our smartphone take a photo, of a sign that communicates our mission. We can take it of ourselves. We can take a 10-second, 20-second video and post it, and for no work at all. Whoever is following us on social media gets a download of what that message and mission is. If we're trying to double our face time, if you maybe get a half an hour a week interface with in a church environment, I'm getting half an hour maybe of message time with my congregation, with the church. We can double that on social media. We can triple that by utilizing social media to communicate our message to us young people. That's where their eyes are at. They're on a screen. They're on a screen, Sharon.
That's good.
Young people are looking
doubling
at
and
screens.
tripling the interaction that you have with someone. I hadn't really thought about it before, but that's true, isn't it? And that's the kind of engagement that they want, not necessarily the kind of engagement that used to be measured. So can you measure how successful you're being in attracting younger members? Is it still just bodies turning up, or is it like, you know, friends on Facebook or follows on Twitter, or how many times your Instagram photo gets liked?
Yes, the answer is yes, you can measure. And yes, those are the mechanisms for measuring. To be able to actually, there is a way that you can tell how many people have clicked like on your photo, how many people, but even how many friends you have. You know, you can always be adding, particularly on Twitter, how many people are following you, through being able to actually hashtag the phrases that people are interested in, are searching for out there on Twitter. To actually, you can build an audience. You really can. I'm not an expert at that though, Sharon, but I would always utilize people who are better at that, people who run marketing companies, people who run branding agencies. These are the people to talk to in terms of being able to do this. And indeed, your website. Young people, when they're searching for you, will go straight to the internet. And the ability to have a website that really communicates your message and mission in a way that young people find attractive is so important.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about finding younger members and the importance of younger members and your personal cool, if you like. Talked a bit about leadership and communication and creating youth-friendly environments. Can we talk a bit about humour? If you want to communicate with young people, are there ways that you can work on your humour? Can you watch comedians or comedy shows, or what importance does humour play?
You know, Sharon, I was very earnest. I was a passionate, zealous, God-fearing Christian. And I
can see that about you.
and I was not very funny because I was too intense. I was so intense. And I just learned that I wasn't that funny. So I actually said, I have to be funnier. I have to learn what funny is, Sharon. And so
funny.
Young people, I discovered, love humor that is that teases out tension.
Okay.
They love humor that's gross. They love gross stories. They love hearing about the time the fly flew down the straw of your thick shake. They love hearing, they find gross humor funny. They find extreme humor funny. This is what I learned to do. I learned to stretch my story. I learned to, if I had a story, to actually, instead of saying it was hot, I would say it was so hot birds were falling out of the sky. Dogs were melting into pools of blubber on the ground. I learnt that teenagers would laugh at that stuff.
So the more extreme it is, the
funnier it is. And I should qualify this. This is teenagers in Australia, America, in first world countries. Because I found in Asia, actually, it doesn't work. You have to be very slapstick humor in Asian countries, whereas more in Western culture, a bit more of it's the opposite. And so I would always, I learnt that to be funny, take a very normal story and make it funny, stretch out, find elements that were extreme, and make the story a bit more extreme. And so yeah, I think humour has to be incorporated into a message, and this is the way I tried to do this, by making the story more crazy, more gross, by making the story, stretching it, and in a way that was obvious. It wasn't a lie. It was very much, like I said, I would bring how about a cold can of Coke? Rather than saying I had a cold can of Coke, I would say, I'd bring the can of Coke in front of them. I'd say, please note the condensation on this cold can of Coke. Please note the sound as I open the cold can of Coke. So I was overdoing it, but it was funny. I mean, just talking about a can of Coke like that's vaguely funny because I'm building it up. You know what I'm saying? So I tried to be a bit more like that, and I would, because my message was very intense. I would in the Bible they talk about Selah moments, where they'd say stop and contemplate. I found that after 5 minutes of really being intense when communicating from the front, maybe like preaching, after 5-10 minutes of that, people were full up. They had all the intenseness and of your message that they could get. And so what I would do is then bring some fun humor into the mix, and try and bring illustrations that made far more digestible my message. Teenagers need a digestible message. It can't be too meaty all the time. You have to bring in humor. And I talked about these segue moments where you've got a person dressed in a monkey suit running through the middle of your message, where you would employ some element to break it up, so that people could take a moment to laugh, to take a moment to absorb what you've said before you go again with some more.
That's good. I think too, you talked before about games and that. I always find it funny watching other people do things where I'm glad I'm not on that stage. So I think sometimes if you can get someone on stage and put them in kind of an unreal situation, that creates a bit of comedy as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, teenagers, you don't have to be the world's coolest person for community, but they do notice, they can spot a fake, And so that's what I'm saying, where if you want to have young people in an organisation, you have to love young people. You have to really want young people to be a part of it. And when they are, enthusiastically endorse who they are, enthusiastically champion how cool they are, and champion these young people. Believe in them, and invest in them. And I feel like if you're doing this for a young person, young people can feel that genuineness of embrace and incorporation of them into what you're doing, and confidently doing that in a non-needy way is, I think, it communicates well.
Yeah, I think authenticity and keeping it real is really important, isn't it? They, like you said, they can spot a fake, and so they want something that's really real. One way of doing that is, to kind of get them to tell their own story. Do you think that's important, to give them a voice where they can share their experience?
Yes, I think teenagers feel so special when you incorporate their voice, their experience into what you're doing. And when the language of a teenager communicates your mission, there is no prouder moment. When I was working for Bible Society Australia, and I was working in the capacity of trying to join our mission to what churches were doing right across the state, I recognised that if I was going to connect with youth groups, as a 37-year-old at the time, I was not the person to be doing that. And so what I would do was find a young person, a young youth leader in these youth groups, and I'd say, what can I do to assist you, youth leader? What do I have? Maybe it's finance, maybe it's a venue, maybe it's gear. What can I do to assist you in what you're doing? Would you be a youth advocate for Bible Society Australia? Would you be a youth advocate? What's a youth advocate do? Well, 2 to 3 times a year, I want you to come to our event. I want you to stand up the front, and I want you to communicate on our behalf, our mission, our message. And so what we would do, because you don't always have the money to employ a young person, but what we would do is say, what do we have that we can support someone who is a young youthy leader, and we would actually engage them as a youth advocate in this way. And that way, when they were up the front, they would communicate on our behalf our message. And they would communicate the message of Bible engagement, which is what we were all about, and Bible mission. And so I would find those young people that young people were listening to. I would find those young youth leaders that were attracting young people already, that had the proven, and I would employ them as an advocate, sponsor them as an advocate in this way. And they, a couple of times a year at large events, would communicate our message. And that worked really well.
That's good. So if you had to kind of summarize how an organization, or like what's the most important thing for an organization in attracting young people, because we've talked about 10 different, or maybe more than 15 different factors tonight as we sort of got along, but at least 10 things that are important for attracting young people. What would be the one thing that you'd say is the most important if an organization wants to attract young people?
Well, I would say CEO, leader of an organization, person in my position, you need to choose to love young people and embrace them into your organization. And then,
I feel like you're about to burst into a Whitney Houston song about children being the future.
Exactly. And for a purpose, you know, our mission, our message is sacred. We're not changing it necessarily, but the way that we can give over our preferences to communicate and to provide an environment where our message and mission can be communicated that young people do find attractive, to find the young people that can lead in those environments, to build relationship, to find some way of being able to engage those people, to build those environments, is absolutely the way to go. Rather than getting a young person to have to completely strip off everything cultural, everything preferential to them, and try and get them to change to come into our context, I think is absolutely essential in attracting young people into our organisations.
And if you can't, like, I know a lot of organisations have certain rules that are preferential to existing members. You know, there might be a dress code, or you know, the way you speak, or the noise level, for example, or no running or whatever. If you can have events that are just for young people where those rules don't apply to them, it really shows them how much you value them, doesn't it?
And we are always about, even in the church, Sharon, bringing young people from those preferential environments, those environments where we're giving them preference, into an environment that is all about multiple generations. In your organisation, or particularly the organisation of the church, there are 4 generations represented. Every generation brings something fresh. Every generation has their own unique something that they bring. The youth, understanding what they bring and understanding what the other generations bring, gives them, if they understand what each generation brings, and then they understand what they're coming into the more generalized context. And so we would teach in that context, in that specific specialized context, having built relationship with these young people, we would then teach them, hey, you're coming into a larger context now. You're coming into Sunday morning church, and you need to understand that you are a part You're one generation of four. This is what you bring. You bring passion, you bring enthusiasm, you bring a desire to change the world, you bring this idealism with you. It's awesome. But guess what? There's other generations that are paying the bills. There's other generations that have wisdom and mentoring to bring, that have so much more to bring, life experience and all these other elements. And so you're coming into it and you need to be respectful in this larger environment, understanding that you're not the full picture. But we did that having already built a context.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's, you know, a lot of where your value lies is that you have been so successful in not just attracting younger members, but in integrating them to the organisation, so they're very much like part of the fabric of the organisation. But that's a whole other topic that we don't even have time for because we're out of time. But I really want to thank you so much for tonight, Seth, and all those great ideas. I know it's going to help a lot of organisations and help them to literally survive, let alone thrive, because every organisation, the life and death is bringing in younger members. So thank you so much for that. I've set up a page. I know you haven't seen this. You don't know about this. I've set up a page so people can connect with you on your Facebook and on your Instagram so that they can ask you questions directly if they want to about how to attract younger people and about the work that you're doing currently in America. And also, Shaz Academy people love to give an equal exchange for value, and I know you've given so much value tonight. So I've set up a little page where they can donate as well, because I know in America at the moment one of your challenges is with your son's health insurance. Is it like $26,000 or something? It's quite expensive, isn't it?
Yep, we'll be paying $26,000 for healthcare this year, and most of that is because our son has special needs, and we have very specific care for him. So again, the thing we're raising this year and going to our supporters of the mission that we're doing here in the United States is asking them to help us cover this by way of support.
Yeah, well, I'm going to end the webinar by redirecting everyone off to that offer so that they can participate in that. With such a huge bill, every tiny little bit helps. So $5, $20, $500, whatever you got, it would all be very helpful. But thank you to all the audience for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar, and I'll send you off now to the Shaz Academy page where you can connect direct with Seth.